The fluorescent lights of Denver International Airport hummed overhead as 7-year-old Grace Mitchell crawled deeper into the cold plastic chair. Her tiny frame shivered under the thin jacket that had seen better days. Her blonde hair matted against her pale cheek. Around her, the late-night crowd rushed past, businessmen with rolling suitcases, families heading to vacations, couples holding hands. None of them noticed the small girl who had been sleeping in Terminal B for the past 6 hours. Grace's stomach growled, but she had learned not to cry about hunger anymore. Mama had given her the last $20 bill and put her on the plane to Grandma's funeral in Oklahoma, but somehow she had ended up here in Denver when the plane made an unexpected stop. The nice lady at the gate said there were no more flights until morning, and Grace didn't have money for a hotel room. So she found this quiet corner and tried to make herself invisible, just like Mama taught her when the landlord came knocking. The sound of expensive leather shoes clicking against the terminal floor grew closer, but Grace kept her eyes closed tight. Maybe if she stayed very still, whoever it was would walk past like everyone else had. The footsteps stopped right in front of her chair. "Excuse me, sweetheart." The voice was gentle, concerned. Grace's eyes fluttered open to see a tall man in a navy blue suit crouching down to her level. His kind brown eyes studied her with worry, and she noticed a small airline pin on his lapel that marked him as someone important. "Are you here all by yourself?" Grace sat up slowly, her back aching from the uncomfortable position. She rubbed her eyes and looked around the nearly empty terminal. A few maintenance workers pushed their carts in the distance, and she could see the security guard making his rounds. The man waiting for her answer had silver streaks in his dark hair and laugh lines around his eyes that made him seem safe. "I'm waiting for my plane," Grace said quietly, her voice hoarse from sleep. "It doesn't come until morning." William Parker, CEO of Mountain Sky Airlines, felt his heart clench at the sight of this small child alone in his airport. In his 15 years of running the company, he had seen many travelers, but something about this little girl's situation sent alarm bells ringing in his head. Her clothes were clean but worn, and she carried only a small backpack that looked like it held everything she owned. "Where are your parents, honey?" William asked, settling into the chair beside her. "Are they somewhere in the airport?" Grace shook her head, her lower lip trembling slightly. "Mama's at work. She put me on the plane to go to Grandma's funeral, but they said I had to get off here and wait. The lady at the gate said someone would help me, but then she went home." William's jaw tightened. His staff should never have left a child unattended like this. He made a mental note to review their unaccompanied minor policies immediately. But right now, this little girl needed help, not corporate procedures. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Grace Mitchell. I'm 7 3/4." She looked up at him with eyes that seemed too old for her young face. "Are you going to call the police? Mama said if anyone official finds me alone, they might take me away from her." The fear in her voice broke William's heart. He had built his airline company from nothing, working 18-hour days and making difficult decisions, but he had never felt as determined as he did right now to help this child. "No one's going to take you away, Grace. I'm William, and I work for the airline. My job is to make sure passengers are safe and taken care of." He pulled out his cell phone. "Can you give me your mama's phone number? I think we should call her and let her know where you are." Grace recited the number from memory, and William dialed carefully. The phone rang several times before a tired voice answered. "Hello." The woman sounded exhausted, and William could hear the noise of what sounded like a busy restaurant in the background. "Is this Rebecca Mitchell?" "Yes. Who is this? It's almost midnight." Panic crept into her voice. "Is something wrong with Grace? Is she hurt?" "This is William Parker, CEO of Mountain Sky Airlines. Grace is safe, but she's been stranded in our Denver airport. There seems to have been some confusion about her connecting flight." The sound that came through the phone was part sob, part relief. "Oh my God, is she okay? I put her on the plane this morning with instructions for the staff to help her get to Oklahoma City. She was supposed to be at my mother's house hours ago." William watched Grace, who was listening intently to his side of the conversation. The child's shoulders had relaxed slightly when she heard her mother's voice through the phone. "She's unharmed, but she's been sleeping in the terminal. Mrs. Mitchell, with respect, how did a 7-year-old end up traveling alone across the country?" There was a long pause before Rebecca answered, and when she did, her voice was thick with tears. My mother died 3 days ago. Heart attack. Grace barely knew her, but she's the only family we have left, and I couldn't afford to miss work for both of us to go to the funeral. I thought the airline would take care of her. I saved for 2 months to buy that ticket. What would you do if you found a child sleeping alone in an airport? This story gets even more heartwarming. Make sure to subscribe and tell me in the comments what you think should happen next. William felt the weight of this woman's desperation through the phone. Here was a mother so overwhelmed by circumstances that she had been forced to make an impossible choice. He looked at Grace, who was watching him with hope and fear battling in her young eyes. Mrs. Mitchell, where are you right now? I'm at work. I clean offices downtown at night, and I can't leave or I'll lose the job. I've already lost my day job at the grocery store, and we're living in my car until I can save enough for an apartment deposit. Her voice broke completely. I'm a terrible mother. I should never have sent her alone. You're not a terrible mother, William said firmly. You're a mother doing everything you can in an impossible situation. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to personally make sure Grace is safe tonight, and tomorrow we're going to figure out how to get your family back on track. Can you get to the airport? I don't have a car anymore. We lost it last week. I take the bus to work. William was already mentally calculating distances and transportation options. I'll send a car for you. What's the address where you're working? As Rebecca gave him the information, William was already texting his personal assistant, despite the late hour. Some situations couldn't wait for business hours, and this was definitely one of them. Grace had fallen asleep again, her small hand resting trustingly on his arm. Looking down at this brave little girl who had spent the night alone in his airport, William made a decision that would change all their lives forever. Tomorrow, he was going to find out exactly what the Mitchell family needed, and he was going to make sure they got it. Some might call it divine intervention that he had decided to take one final walk through the terminal before going home. William preferred to think of it as being in the right place at the right time to do the right thing. The overnight cleaning crew had arrived, and their supervisor nodded respectfully as he recognized the CEO. William gestured for him to approach. Grace here is going to be our special guest tonight. Can you make sure she has a blanket and maybe something warm to drink when she wakes up? Of course, Mr. Parker. Should I call security? No need. I'll be staying with her until her mother arrives. William settled back in his chair, watching over Grace as she slept. He had spent countless nights working late in his office above these very terminals, but he had never spent one that felt as important as this. Dawn was breaking over the Rocky Mountains when Rebecca Mitchell stumbled out of the sleek black car that William had sent for her. She had spent the entire 40-minute ride fighting back tears and preparing herself for the worst. Her baby girl, alone in an airport all night while she scrubbed floors 20 miles away, unable to help. The guilt was eating her alive. The driver, a kind middle-aged man named Frank who worked for William's company, had assured her multiple times that Grace was safe, but Rebecca wouldn't believe it until she saw her daughter with her own eyes. She rushed through the sliding doors of Terminal B, her cleaning uniform wrinkled and her blonde hair escaping its ponytail. Mama! Grace's sleepy voice called out from across the seating area. Rebecca ran toward the sound, her heart pounding. She found Grace sitting at a small table near the coffee shop, a warm muffin in front of her, and a cup of hot chocolate steaming nearby. Beside her sat the man from the phone, William Parker, looking surprisingly fresh for someone who had spent the night in an airport. Grace, baby. Rebecca dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry you were scared. I wasn't scared, Mama, Grace said, hugging her mother tightly. Mr. Williams stayed with me all night. He told me stories about airplanes and showed me how the luggage moves on the conveyor belts. And look. She held up a small plastic wings pin. He made me an honorary junior pilot. Rebecca looked up at William through her tears. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you for taking care of her. William stewed and extended his hand to help Rebecca to her feet. In the morning light, he could see that Grace had inherited her mother's delicate features and bright blue eyes. Rebecca was younger than he had expected, probably not much older than 30, and the exhaustion on her face told the story of someone who had been fighting an uphill battle for a long time. "You don't need to repay anything," William said. "But I do think we need to talk. Janet Torres from our passenger services department is on her way over, and I've taken the liberty of calling Denver Social Services to let them know the situation is resolved. No one's in trouble, but they wanted to make sure Grace was safe." Rebecca's face went pale. "Social Services? Are they going to take her away?" "Absolutely not," William said firmly. "They are here to help, not to separate families." "But Rebecca, can I call you Rebecca? We need to address the bigger picture. A 7-year-old shouldn't be traveling alone across the country under the best of circumstances, and from what you told me last night, these aren't the best of circumstances." Grace was happily munching her muffin, swinging her legs from the chair, apparently oblivious to the adult conversation happening around her. A woman in a professional pantsuit approached their table, carrying a clipboard and wearing a warm smile. "Mr. Parker, I'm Janet Torres from Passenger Services. And you must be Mrs. Mitchell." She shook Rebecca's hand and knelt down to Grace's level. "And this must be our brave traveler. Grace, I heard you had quite an adventure last night." Grace nodded enthusiastically. "Mr. William taught me about how pilots talk to the control tower. Did you know they have special words for everything?" Janet laughed. "I did know that. Grace, would you like to see the cockpit of one of our planes while your mama and Mr. William talk? We have a pilot who would love to show you around." As Grace skipped off with Janet, chattering excitedly about airplanes, William turned his full attention to Rebecca. She was fidgeting with her hands, clearly overwhelmed by the kindness being shown to her family. "Rebecca, I need you to know that everything I'm about to offer comes with no strings attached. You don't owe me anything, and you're free to say no to any or all of it. But after staying up all night thinking about your situation, I believe I can help." Rebecca looked at him suspiciously. "Why would you want to help us? You don't even know us." "Because every child deserves to feel safe, and every parent deserves the chance to provide that safety without having to make impossible choices," William said simply. "My company owns several corporate housing units downtown that we use for visiting executives. One of them is sitting empty right now, and it's going to stay empty for at least the next 6 months. You and Grace could stay there while you get back on your feet." "I can't afford to pay rent on an executive apartment," Rebecca said quietly. "I'm not asking you to pay rent. I'm asking you to let me help." William leaned forward. "Rebecca, I've been researching your background this morning. You have an associate degree in business administration, 3 years of management experience at a retail chain, and according to your credit report, which I hope you don't mind that I pulled, you've never missed a payment on anything until the medical bills from Grace's emergency appendectomy last year." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. That appendectomy had been the beginning of their downward spiral. Even with insurance, the bills had been overwhelming, and she'd had to miss so much work that she'd eventually lost her job. "Those medical bills destroyed us," she whispered. "I was making good money as an assistant manager, but when Grace got sick, I had to choose between being with her in the hospital and keeping my job. I chose Grace, and everything fell apart after that." "You chose right," William said firmly. "And now I want to give you the chance to rebuild. I have an opening in my corporate offices for someone with your exact experience. It's an administrative coordinator position with full benefits, including health insurance that would cover any future medical needs for Grace." The social worker who had been quietly observing from a nearby table approached them. "Mrs. Mitchell? I'm Carol White from Denver Department of Human Services. Mr. Parker contacted us early this morning to make sure we were aware of the situation and to ensure that all proper protocols were followed." Rebecca tensed, but Carol's demeanor was warm and professional. "I want you to know that we're not here to separate your family. From everything I've observed and heard, you're a loving mother who found herself in an impossible situation. Mr. Parker's offer of housing and employment seems like exactly the kind of community support that helps families stay together and thrive." "What's the catch?" Rebecca asked, looking back and forth between William and Carol. "People don't just give away apartments and jobs to strangers." William smiled. "The catch is that you have to let people help you. I know that's harder than it sounds for someone who's been fighting alone for as long as you have. But sometimes accepting help is the bravest thing you can do. At that moment, Grace came running back from her cockpit too, her face glowing with excitement. Mama, Mama, Captain Rodriguez let me sit in the pilot seat, and I got to talk into the radio. She said I could be a pilot someday if I want to. Rebecca looked down at her daughter's bright, happy face, happier than she had seen her in months, and felt something shift inside her chest. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was hope, or maybe it was just the realization that Grace deserved every opportunity in the world. Mr. William, Grace said, tugging on his sleeve, are you going to help us find a house? Because our car got really cold at night, and Mama couldn't sleep because she was worried about me. The simple honesty of her daughter's words broke down Rebecca's last walls of resistance. She looked at William, this stranger who had spent the night watching over her child and was now offering them a new life. When could we start? She asked quietly. 2 hours later, Rebecca found herself standing in the lobby of Mountain Sky Airlines corporate headquarters, holding Grace's hand tightly as they waited for William to return from what he'd called a quick meeting with the housing coordinator. The building was modern and bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in streams of Colorado sunshine. Grace was fascinated by the model airplanes suspended from the ceiling and the wall of photographs showing destinations around the world. Mama, look at this one, Grace whispered, pointing to a picture of a tropical beach. Do you think we could go somewhere like that someday? Maybe, baby, Rebecca said, though the word someday felt foreign in her mouth. For so long, she had lived out our day-to-day, that thinking about the future felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. A woman in a bright red dress approached them with a warm smile. She was about Rebecca's age, with curly brown hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. You must be Rebecca and Grace, she said. I'm Lisa Chen, the HR director here. Mr. Parker asked me to show you around while he finishes up with the legal department. Legal department? Rebecca felt her stomach drop. Is there a problem? Oh, not at all, Lisa said quickly. He's just making sure all the paperwork for the housing arrangement is properly documented. Company policy requires everything to be official and above board. Would you like to see your new office space? Rebecca followed Lisa through the bright corridors, noting how every employee they passed seemed genuinely happy to be there. People smiled and greeted each other warmly, and she could hear laughter coming from various offices. It was such a contrast to the sterile cleaning environments where she had been working. This would be your workspace, Lisa said, opening the door to a small but comfortable office with a view of the mountains. As administrative coordinator, you would be supporting our customer service department, helping to resolve complex passenger issues and coordinating with various departments to ensure smooth operations. Grace had wandered over to the window and was pressing her nose against the glass. Mama, you can see the whole city from here. And look, there's the airport where we met Mr. William. Rebecca stared at the office, her office, potentially, with its clean desk, ergonomic chair, and computer setup. What would the salary be? She asked quietly. $55,000 annually, plus full benefits including health, dental, and vision insurance. There's also a child care center on the second floor of this building, so Grace could stay here safely while you work. Rebecca's knees nearly gave out. $55,000 was more than she had made in her best year ever. With health insurance, she would never again have to choose between Grace's medical needs and keeping a roof over their heads. The child care center has after-school programs too, Lisa continued. Educational activities, homework help, and they even have a small library. Grace, would you like to see it? As they toured the bright, cheerful child care facility, Rebecca watched her daughter's eyes light up at the reading corner, the art supplies, and the computers set up for educational games. The director, Mrs. Anderson, was a grandmotherly woman who immediately took to Grace and showed her where she could keep her backpack and lunchbox. We serve breakfast and snacks here too, Mrs. Anderson explained. So if Mama has early meetings, Grace can eat with us before school. William appeared in the doorway just as Grace was examining a globe in the corner of the room. How's the tour going? Mr. William, Grace ran over to him. Did you know there are kids here who get to do art projects every day? And Mrs. Anderson said I could help her feed the classroom fish. Is that right? William smiled down at her. What do you think, Rebecca? Ready to see your new home? The apartment building was only a 15-minute walk from the office, nestled in a tree-lined neighborhood that looked like something from a magazine. The doorman greeted William by name and handed Rebecca a set of keys with a welcoming smile. The Parkers have been very good to this building, he said. Any friend of theirs is a friend of ours. The apartment on the 7th floor was nothing like Rebecca had expected. Instead of the corporate sterility she had imagined, it was warm and inviting, with comfortable furniture, a fully equipped kitchen, and a living room that overlooked a small park where children were playing on swings and slides. The second bedroom is already set up for Grace, William said, opening the door to reveal a child's paradise, a bed with a colorful comforter, a desk for homework, bookshelves filled with age-appropriate books, and even a few toys and games stacked neatly in a corner. Grace gasped and looked at her mother for permission before running into the room and spinning in a circle with her arms outstretched. It's like a princess room, Mama. Look, there's even a nightlight that looks like stars. Rebecca stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. William, this is too much. The job is more than generous, but this apartment, it must cost a fortune. It's been sitting empty for 8 months, William said. Corporate housing only gets used when we have visiting executives, and we haven't had any long-term visitors lately. Rebecca, you would actually be doing me a favor by staying here. Empty apartments in buildings like this can develop problems, pipes freezing, security issues. Having someone living here full-time is actually beneficial. The kitchen was stocked with basic groceries, milk, bread, fresh fruit, and even some of Grace's favorite cereal, which somehow William had learned during their conversation that morning. Rebecca opened the refrigerator and found it fully stocked with healthy, child-friendly options. How did you know what to buy? She asked. I may have asked Grace a few questions during our airport adventure last night, William admitted. She's very thorough when it comes to describing her favorite foods. Grace had discovered the balcony and was calling for them to come look at the playground below. As they stood outside in the warm afternoon sun, Rebecca felt something she hadn't experienced in almost 2 years: peace. What do you need from me? She asked William. I mean it. People don't do things like this without expecting something in return. William was quiet for a moment, watching Grace point out different features of the playground to her mother. I want you to succeed, he said finally. I want Grace to have the stability she needs to grow up feeling secure. And selfishly, I want to prove to myself that sometimes the system works the way it's supposed to work, that when good people hit hard times, the community around them steps up to help. But why us? You could help anyone. Because I found a 7-year-old sleeping alone in my airport, and that's unacceptable, William said simply. Because when I called her mother, I heard a woman who was working herself to death trying to provide for her child. Because sometimes you meet people who remind you why kindness matters. Rebecca felt tears starting again, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of frustration or fear. I accept, she said quietly. All of it. The job, the apartment, the help. And thank you. Grace came running back from the balcony. Mama, can we really live here? Can I really go to the kids' place at Mr. Williams' work? Yes, baby, Rebecca said, kneeling down to hug her daughter. We can really live here. That evening, as they sat on the living room floor eating takeout pizza that William had insisted on buying for their first meal in their new home, Grace looked around at their bright, safe space and said, Mama, I think our luck changed when I met Mr. William in the airport. Rebecca looked at William, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor helping Grace build a tower with some building blocks they'd found in her new room. I think you're right, sweetheart. I think our luck changed completely. 3 weeks into their new life, Rebecca stood in front of her bathroom mirror adjusting her navy blue blazer and marveling at the woman looking back at her. For the first time in almost 2 years, she looked professional, rested, and hopeful. Grace's laughter echoed from the kitchen where she was eating breakfast and chattering to her new favorite stuffed animal, a pilot bear that William had brought her after her first week at the child care center. Mama, Mrs. Anderson says today we're going to learn about different countries, Grace called out. And Captain Rodriguez is coming to read us a story about flying around the world. Rebecca smiled as she applied a light touch of lipstick, another small luxury she hadn't been able to afford in their old life. The job at Mountain Sky Airlines had turned out to be even better than she had hoped. Her supervisor, Michelle Torres, was patient and encouraging, and Rebecca was quickly proving herself capable of handling complex customer service situations that required both empathy and problem-solving skills. "Are you ready to go, sweetheart?" Rebecca called back, grabbing her purse and the lunch Grace had helped pack the night before. The walk to work had become their favorite part of the day. Grace skipped along the sidewalk, pointing out dogs being walked by their neighbors and waving to the crossing guard who had already learned her name. The doorman at their building always had a friendly greeting, and the barista at the coffee shop on the corner had started saving the day-old pastries for Grace to share with her new friends at childcare. "Look, Mama," Grace said, tugging on Rebecca's hand as they approached the Mountain Sky building. "Mr. Williams' car is already here. Do you think he slept at work again?" Rebecca followed Grace's gaze to the parking garage, where William's black SUV was indeed parked in its usual spot. Over the past few weeks, she had learned that William often arrived at the office before dawn and stayed late into the evening. It seemed like a lonely way to live for someone who had shown such warmth and generosity to her family. "Maybe we should invite him for dinner tonight," Grace suggested as they rode the elevator up to the child care center. "Mrs. Anderson taught me how to make spaghetti yesterday, and I could show him." "That's a very nice idea, baby," Rebecca said, though the thought of cooking for William made her oddly nervous. They had shared several casual meals over the past weeks, pizza while setting up the apartment, sandwiches during Grace's enrollment at the child care center, but those had felt like practical necessities. Inviting him to a home-cooked meal felt more personal somehow. After settling Grace with her friends and teachers, Rebecca made her way to her office on the 4th floor. She loved walking through the bright corridors, greeting colleagues who had quickly accepted her as part of the team. Her workspace had become a refuge, organized, efficient, and filled with photos Grace had drawn for her on the child care center's art supplies. "Good morning, Rebecca," Michelle Torres said, appearing at her office door with a steaming cup of coffee and a thick folder. "Ready for a challenging day? We've got a situation that's going to require your special touch." Rebecca had quickly discovered that her special touch was what the team called her ability to calm down frustrated passengers and find creative solutions to travel problems. Yesterday, she had helped reunite an elderly man with his lost luggage that contained his late wife's jewelry, and the week before, she had coordinated emergency travel for a family rushing to see their deployed soldier, son, during his unexpected leave. "What's the situation?" Rebecca asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Family of 5 from Boston. Their original flight was canceled due to weather, and they've been stranded for 2 days trying to get to a wedding in San Francisco. The wedding is this afternoon, and the bride is the passenger's daughter. They are understandably emotional." Rebecca spent the next hour on the phone with the stranded family, coordinating with 3 different airlines, a car rental company, and even the wedding venue to arrange alternative transportation and timing. When she finally managed to get them on a flight that would arrive just in time for the ceremony, the father of the bride broke down in tears of gratitude on the phone. "You just saved my daughter's wedding," he said. "I don't know how to thank you." "Just give her a hug from all of us at Mountain Sky," Rebecca replied, making notes in the file about the resolution. Michelle had been listening from the doorway and clapped softly as Rebecca hung up the phone. "That was beautiful work. You have a gift for this." "I just remember what it feels like when everything seems impossible," Rebecca said. "Sometimes people don't need a miracle. They just need someone who cares enough to make some phone calls." At lunch, Rebecca decided to take Grace's suggestion seriously and stopped by William's office on the 20th floor. His assistant, an efficient woman named Patricia, waved her through with a smile. "He's on a conference call, but it should be wrapping up soon," Patricia said. "He mentioned that Grace lost a tooth yesterday. Is she excited about the tooth fairy?" Rebecca laughed. "She's been checking under her pillow every hour since last night. She wants to know if the tooth fairy can find her in a new apartment." William's office door opened, and he stepped out, ending a call on his Bluetooth headset. "Rebecca," he said with a smile that made her heart skip slightly, "what brings you to the executive floor?" "Grace wanted me to ask if you'd like to have dinner with us tonight. She learned how to make spaghetti and wants to cook for you." William's face lit up in a way that made Rebecca realize how little joy he must have in his personal life. "I would love that. Should I bring anything? Just yourself. Grace is very excited to show off her cooking skills. Then I'll be there. 6 o'clock. As Rebecca walked back to her office, she found herself looking forward to the evening in a way that had nothing to do with Grace's cooking demonstration. William had become more than just a benefactor over the past weeks. He had become a friend who remembered Grace's favorite books, who asked about Rebecca's work projects, and who somehow managed to make their small family feel less alone in the world. That afternoon, Grace spent her time at childcare planning the dinner menu with Mrs. Anderson and making a special placemat for William using construction paper and glitter. Rebecca left work exactly at 5 o'clock, another luxury of her new job, and walked home with Grace chattering excitedly about their dinner plans. Do you think Mr. William knows how to twirl spaghetti on his fork? Grace asked as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. Because I could teach him if he doesn't know how. I'm sure he would love to learn from you, Rebecca said, unlocking their door and breathing in the familiar scent of their home, coffee, Grace's strawberry shampoo, and the vanilla candle she had bought last week simply because she liked the way it made the living room smell cozy. At exactly 6 o'clock, William knocked on their door carrying a bouquet of sunflowers and a small wrapped package. Flowers for the chef, he said, presenting the bouquet to Grace with a formal bow. And I brought you something to replace the Tooth Fairy's visit. Grace tore open the package to reveal a small book about airplanes, with her name embossed on the cover in gold letters. It's my very own book, she gasped. Look, Mama, it has my name on it. As they sat around the dining room table eating Grace's slightly overcooked but enthusiastically seasoned spaghetti, Rebecca watched William answer Grace's endless questions about flying in airports with infinite patience. He listened to her stories about her new friends at childcare, admired her drawings, and somehow made a 7-year-old feel like the most interesting person in the world. Mr. William, Grace said between bites, do you have any kids? No, I don't, William said. I never found the right person to start a family with. Well, you could practice with us, Grace offered generously. I could teach you how to braid hair and make peanut butter sandwiches without the crust. Rebecca felt her cheeks warm at her daughter's innocent suggestion, but William's response was gentle and thoughtful. That sounds like excellent practice, he said. I would be honored to learn from such an expert. Later, after Grace had fallen asleep in her bed surrounded by her new books and stuffed animals, Rebecca and William sat on the balcony sharing a bottle of wine and watching the city lights twinkle below. She's an amazing kid, William said. You've done an incredible job raising her. I feel like I've just been surviving, Rebecca admitted. This is the first time in almost 2 years that I felt like I could actually be a good mother instead of just a desperate one. You've always been a good mother, William said firmly. Good mothers do whatever it takes to protect their children, even when it means making impossible choices. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Rebecca found herself studying William's profile in the soft light from the living room. He was handsome in a quiet, steady way that she was starting to find very appealing. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. Why aren't you married? I mean, you're successful, kind, obviously good with children. William was quiet for so long that Rebecca worried she had overstepped. Finally, he spoke. I guess I was so focused on building the company that I forgot to build anything else. And after a while, it became easier to work than to try to connect with people. Until I met you and Grace, I didn't realize how lonely I'd become. Rebecca felt something shift in the space between them, a recognition of shared loneliness and the possibility of something more. Well, she said softly, you're not alone anymore. 2 months into their new life, Grace Mitchell had become the unofficial mascot of Mountain Sky Airlines. She knew every employee by name, from the janitorial staff to the senior executives, and her daily appearances in the child care center had become a highlight for everyone in the building. Her artwork covered the refrigerator in the break room, and her stories about school and friends had become a regular feature of the monthly staff meetings. Rebecca found herself settling into a rhythm she had never experienced before, the rhythm of security and happiness. Her work performance had earned her 2 commendations from Customer Service Excellence, and Michelle Torres had started involving her in training new employees. For the first time in her adult life, Rebecca was building something instead of just surviving. Mama, guess what happened at school today? Grace announced as they walked home from work on a particularly beautiful October afternoon. The leaves on the trees lining their street had turned brilliant shades of red and gold, and Grace had taken to collecting the prettiest ones to press in her homework folder. "What happened, sweetheart?" "Mrs. Peterson said I could be in the reading group with the second graders because I'm reading at a higher level. And Tommy Rodriguez, his Captain Rodriguez's son, he wants to be my partner for the science project about how airplanes fly." Rebecca smiled, remembering how scared Grace had been to start at her new school. The child who had once been so withdrawn and anxious was now thriving, making friends, and excited about learning. "That's wonderful, baby. What's your science project going to be about?" "We're going to build a model airplane and test different wing shapes to see which ones fly the best. Tommy's mom said she could help us with the engineering part, and Mr. William said he has some old airplane manuals we could look at." William had become such a constant presence in their lives that Grace talked about him the way other children talked about beloved uncles or family friends. He joined them for dinner at least twice a week, helped Grace with her homework, and had even started a tradition of Saturday morning adventures, trips to the Science Museum, the zoo, or the Children's Theater downtown. "Speaking of Mr. William," Rebecca said, pulling out her phone as it buzzed with a text message. "He wants to know if we're free for dinner tonight. He says he has something exciting to share." "Oh yes," Grace said, jumping up and down with excitement. "I made him a drawing of our whole family at school today. Even Mrs. Peterson said it was really good." That evening, William arrived at their apartment with his usual punctuality, but Rebecca immediately noticed something different about his demeanor. He seemed more energetic than usual, almost excited, and he kept checking his phone with a mysterious smile. "Mr. William, you look like you have a secret," Grace announced as soon as he walked through the door. "As a matter of fact, I do have some news," William said, settling into his usual spot at their dining room table. "But first, I want to hear about your day. How was school?" Grace launched into a detailed account of her reading group promotion and her science project plans, while Rebecca served the chicken casserole she had learned to make from a recipe Lisa Chen had shared. Watching William listen to Grace with complete attention, asking follow-up questions and celebrating her achievements as if they were his own, Rebecca felt the familiar warmth in her chest that had been growing stronger each day. "Now," Grace said after finishing her story, "what's your secret?" William grinned and pulled out his phone. "Well, you know how my company works with other airlines around the world to help passengers with connecting flights and international travel." Grace nodded seriously, as if international airline partnerships were a normal topic of conversation for 7-year-olds. "I got a call today from the CEO of a partner airline in France. They have a family, a mother and her 8-year-old daughter, who are stranded in Paris because of a passport issue. They missed their connecting flight to come visit family in Denver, and they've been stuck at the airport for 2 days." Rebecca immediately understood where this was going. "You want to help them the same way you helped us." "More than that," William said. "I want us to help them. Rebecca, you become our customer service miracle worker. Everyone in the company talks about your ability to solve impossible situations. And Grace, you know better than anyone what it feels like to be a scared kid in an airport far from home." Grace's eyes widened with understanding. They need someone who knows how to help families that are stuck. "Exactly. The little girl speaks some English, but her mother is completely overwhelmed by dealing with international bureaucracy. I thought maybe you and Rebecca could video chat with them tomorrow, help them understand what resources are available, and guide them through the process." Rebecca felt a surge of purpose that had nothing to do with her job responsibilities. "Of course we'll help. What can we do?" William pulled up a folder on his phone with information about the stranded family. Marie Dubois and her daughter Sophie. Marie's sister lives here in Denver and was supposed to pick them up 3 days ago. The passport issue is complicated, but solvable if we can walk them through the right steps. As they spent the evening researching French consular services and international passenger rights, Rebecca realized that this was becoming more than just a one-time favor. William was creating an informal network of support that extended far beyond his own company. "Have you helped other families like this?" she asked during a break in their research. "A few," William admitted. "There was a refugee family from Syria last month, and a single father with twins who got stranded during a flight delay crisis. But having you involved makes it so much more effective. You understand what these families are going through in a way that I never could." Grace, who had been quietly drawing while the adults worked, looked up from her paper. "Mr. William, are we going to help lots of families find homes like you helped us? Would you like to do that?" William asked. "Yes," Grace said firmly, "because everybody should have a safe place to sleep and someone who cares about them." The next afternoon, Rebecca sat in the conference room at Mountain Sky Airlines with Grace by her side, video chatting with Marie and Sophie Dubois. The French woman was exhausted and clearly overwhelmed, while 8-year-old Sophie clung to her mother's hand and looked around the airport with tired, frightened eyes. "Bow, Sophie," Grace said carefully, having practiced the pronunciation with Mrs. Anderson that morning. "Just sways, Grace. I got lost in an airport too, but Mr. William helped me and my mama." Sophie's face brightened slightly at hearing another child's voice, and she responded in heavily accented English. "You were scared too?" "Very scared," Grace said. "But look, now I live in a beautiful apartment and my mama has a good job and everything is better. Mr. William helps families like ours." Rebecca worked with Marie to navigate the passport replacement process, while William coordinated with the French consulate and the airline to arrange temporary documentation. Within 4 hours, they had a clear plan for getting the Dubois family to Denver within 2 days. "I cannot thank you enough," Marie said in her careful English. Sophie has not smiled in 3 days, but talking to Grace, she has hope now. After the call ended, William turned to Rebecca with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You realize what we just did, don't you? We helped a family in crisis. We started something bigger than that. What if this became official? What if Mountain Sky Airlines created a formal program to help stranded families, especially those with children? We could call it." He paused, looking at Grace, who was still beaming from her successful conversation with Sophie. "We could call it Grace's Wings." Grace gasped with delight. "A program named after me." "A program inspired by you," William corrected gently. "Because you taught me that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything." Rebecca felt tears starting in her eyes as she realized the scope of what William was proposing. "You want to institutionalize helping people. I want to make sure that no child ever has to sleep alone in an airport again, and that no parent ever has to make the impossible choices you had to make," William said. "And I can't think of anyone better to run such a program than someone who understands exactly what these families are going through." "You want me to run it?" "I want us to run it. All 3 of us. You with your expertise in crisis resolution, me with the corporate resources, and Grace with her understanding of what it means to be helped when you need it most." That night, as Rebecca tucked Grace into her bed surrounded by books and stuffed animals, her daughter looked up at her with serious eyes. "Mama, do you remember when we lived in the car, and you used to cry when you thought I was asleep?" Rebecca's throat tightened. "I remember, baby. I always wanted to help you feel better, but I didn't know how. Now I think maybe helping other families is how we can help you feel better about all the sad times." Rebecca kissed her daughter's forehead, marveling at the wisdom that seemed to come naturally to this remarkable child. "I think you're absolutely right, sweetheart. I think helping others is exactly how we heal our own hearts." As she turned off Grace's nightlight and walked back to the living room where William was waiting with 2 cups of tea and a laptop full of program development ideas, Rebecca realized that their rescue in the airport had been just the beginning. They weren't just building a new life for themselves anymore, they were building something that could change lives for countless other families. And for the first time since her mother's death had started a downward spiral almost 3 years ago, Rebecca felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. The Grace's Wings program officially launched 6 months after that life-changing night in Denver International Airport, and within its first month of operation, it had already helped 18 families across 7 different airports. What had started as William's impulse to help a sleeping child had grown into a comprehensive support network that partnered with airlines, social services, and community organizations across the country. Rebecca's new title was Director of Family Crisis Resolution, and her office had moved to a larger space on the 21st floor right next to William's executive suite. The walls were covered with thank you letters from families they had helped, photos from Grace's school art projects, and a large map dotted with pins marking every city where Grace's wings had made a difference. "Mama, look at this," Grace said, burst through Rebecca's office door after her day at the childcare center. She was carrying a tablet and practically bouncing with excitement. "Sophie in Paris sent me a video message." Rebecca paused her conference call with a social worker in Chicago and smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. Grace had become the unofficial pen pal coordinator for all the children they helped through the program, maintaining friendships across continents and time zones. "Let me finish this call, and then we'll watch it together," Rebecca said. "Mrs. Chen said it's okay if I wait in Mr. Williams' office," Grace said. "He's showing me how to read the airplane tracking computers." As Grace skipped off to Williams' office, Rebecca marveled at how naturally her daughter had adapted to being a regular presence in the corporate executive suite. The other business leaders who came for meetings had grown accustomed to finding a 7-year-old doing homework at the conference table or explaining the finer points of crayon color selection to anyone who would listen. "Rebecca, are you still there?" the social worker in Chicago was asking. "Sorry, yes. You were saying the Patterson family needs housing assistance in addition to the flight rebooking." "Right. Single mother, 2 kids, ages 5 and 9. They were trying to get to her sister's house in Denver after being evicted from their apartment. The sister can provide long-time housing, but they need help with immediate needs, clothes, school enrollment for the kids, medical care for the youngest who has asthma." Rebecca was already typing notes and pulling up her resource database. "I'm sending you the contact information for our Denver housing coordinator. They specialize in emergency family placement and can have someone meet the Patterson family at the airport when they land tomorrow. We also have partnerships with 3 urgent care clinics that provide immediate medical assessment for children in crisis situations." "This is incredible," the social worker said. 6 months ago, a family like this would have fallen through every crack in the system. Now they'll have comprehensive support from the moment they land. After ending the call, Rebecca walked over to William's office and found Grace sitting in his executive chair, serious, studying multiple computer screens, while William pointed out different features of the flight tracking system. "So this number here tells us how many people are on the airplane?" Grace was asking. "Exactly. And this screen shows us the weather conditions along their flight path, so we can predict if they might face delays. And if they do face delays, we can help the families with little kids get food and places to rest." "That's right. We've now got family support coordinators in 12 major airports who specifically watch for travelers who might need extra help." Rebecca leaned against the doorway, watching William patiently answer Grace's questions with the same attention he gave to board meetings and strategic planning sessions. Over the past months, she had seen him transform from a somewhat solitary workaholic into someone who found genuine joy in both the big picture of helping families and the small details of daily life with Grace. "Did you see Sophie's video yet?" Grace asked, suddenly remembering her original mission. "Not yet, sweetheart. Should we watch it now?" Grace enthusiastically pulled up the video message on her tablet. Sophie Dubois appeared on the screen, speaking in accented but confident English from what looked like a comfortable bedroom in Denver. "Wow, Grace. I wanted to show you my new school and tell you about my friend Emma, who is teaching me American playground games. Also, my mama got a job at a French restaurant downtown, and she is very happy. She says every day that we are grateful for Grace's wings and for you and your mama and Mr. William for helping us when we were scared." The video continued with Sophie giving a tour of her new bedroom and introducing her American dolls to Grace's stuffed animals via the camera. Rebecca watched her daughter's face light up with genuine happiness for her friend's success. "She looks so much happier," Grace observed. "Remember how scared she was on the video call from Paris?" "I remember," William said. "And look at her now. Confident, settled, making friends. That's what happens when families get the support they need to start over." Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text message from their newest volunteer coordinator. "We just got a call from Miami International. Family of 4 from Haiti missed their connecting flight to Portland because of a documentation issue. They have relatives in Portland who are expecting them, but they are stuck and don't speak much English." "I'll handle the logistics," William said immediately, already reaching for his phone. "Rebecca, can you coordinate with our Portland housing team?" "Already on it," Rebecca said, pulling up her contacts. Grace, do you want to help me practice some basic French phrases to help them feel welcome? As they spent the next hour coordinating support for the stranded family in Miami, Rebecca reflected on how routine these crisis response situations had become for all of them. Grace contributed by researching Haitian culture to better understand what the family might need. William handled the corporate and financial aspects, and Rebecca managed the complex coordination between multiple agencies and volunteers. You know what we should do? Grace said during a break in the phone calls. We should make a welcome video for kids who are scared in airports. Like, I could tell them about how Mr. William helped us, and Sophie could say something in French, and maybe Tommy could say something in Spanish. That's a brilliant idea, William said. We could have it available in multiple languages and show it to children while their families are getting help. And we could have it playing in the family support areas at all the airports, Rebecca added. Kids hearing from other kids who've been through the same thing. They spent the rest of the afternoon developing Grace's idea into a comprehensive plan for multilingual child support videos. By 6 o'clock, they had outlined scripts, identified child volunteers from families they had previously helped, and scheduled production meetings with the company's media team. Dinner at our place tonight, Rebecca asked William as they gathered their things to leave. Grace wants to try making that pasta dish Mrs. Chen taught her. I wouldn't miss it, William said, and Rebecca caught the warmth in his voice that had become increasingly familiar over the past months. As they walked home together through the Denver streets that had become so familiar and comfortable, Grace skipping ahead to greet the dogs and shop owners she now knew by name, Rebecca realized that their small family had expanded in ways she had never imagined possible. Mr. William, Grace said as they climbed the stairs to their apartment, do you think we'll help 100 families by Christmas? At the rate we're going, probably more than that, William replied. Does that make you happy? Grace considered this seriously. It makes me happy, but also kind of sad. Sad? Rebecca asked, unlocking their door. Why sad, baby? Because it means there are so many families that need help. I wish all the mamas and kids could just be safe and happy without having to be scared first. William knelt down to Grace's level as they entered the apartment. You know what, Grace? You're absolutely right to feel that way. But until the world is perfect, we can make sure that when families do get scared, they don't have to stay scared for very long. Because we'll be there to help them. Because we'll be there to help them, William confirmed. And more importantly, because we're teaching other people how to help too. Every family we assist learns how to help the next family in need. That evening, as they shared Grace's slightly ambitious but enthusiastic pasta creation, Rebecca received a text message from Marie Dubois. It was a photo of Sophie at her new school in Denver, wearing a Girl Scout uniform and surrounded by smiling friends. Look at this, Rebecca said, showing the photo to William and Grace. Grace clapped her hands with delight. She's making friends and everything. Do you think she's teaching them French words? I bet she is, William said. And I bet she's also telling them about a little girl named Grace who helped her feel brave when she was scared. As Rebecca looked around their dining room table, at Grace animatedly planning their next video project, at William listening with the patient attention of someone who had found his purpose, at the photos on the refrigerator showing all the families they had helped, she realized that their story had become something much bigger than a rescue or even a second chance. They had become proof that kindness multiplies, that helping one person creates a ripple effect that touches countless others, and that sometimes the most broken places in people's lives can become the foundation for helping others heal. Do you believe that one act of kindness can change everything? Stay tuned to see how Grace's story continues to inspire others. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts about what kindness means to you. The call came on a Tuesday morning in early December, just as Rebecca was reviewing applications for the Grace's Wings expansion into West Coast airports. Grace was at school, participating in her class's holiday concert practice, and William was in back-to-back meetings with potential corporate sponsors for their growing program. Rebecca Mitchell. The voice on the phone was professional but concerned. Yes, this is Rebecca. This is Dr. Sarah Kim from Denver General Hospital. Your daughter Grace was brought in by ambulance about 30 minutes ago. She collapsed during her school concert practice. Rebecca's world tilted sideways. The coffee mug in her hand crashed to the floor, sending ceramic shards across her office carpet, but she barely noticed. What happened? Is she okay? I'm coming right now. She's stable, but we need to run some tests. The school nurse mentioned that Grace complained of feeling dizzy and nauseous before she collapsed. Can you tell me if she's had any recent illnesses or injuries? Rebecca was already grabbing her purse and running for the elevator, her phone pressed to her ear. No, nothing. She's been perfectly healthy. She had a cold about a month ago, but that was nothing serious. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The elevator ride down 21 floors felt like an eternity. Rebecca's hands shook as she tried to call William, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She left a frantic message explaining what had happened and asking him to meet her at the hospital. During the taxi ride to Denver General, Rebecca's mind raced through every possible scenario. Grace had been fine that morning, excited about the concert practice and chattering about the holiday party planned for the Grace's Wings families they had helped throughout the year. She had eaten her usual breakfast, packed her lunch with care, and skipped out the door with her backpack and the special holiday card she had made for Mrs. Anderson. The emergency room was bustling with typical Tuesday afternoon activity, but Rebecca barely registered the other patients and families as she rushed to the information desk. I'm looking for my daughter, Grace Mitchell. She was brought in by ambulance from Lincoln Elementary School. The receptionist checked her computer. Room 7 in pediatric emergency. Through those double doors and turn left. Rebecca found Grace lying in a hospital bed that seemed too big for her small frame, connected to monitors that beeped softly in the quiet room. Her daughter's face was pale, but her eyes were open and alert. Mama, Grace said weakly, reaching out her hand. I feel funny. I'm here, baby, Rebecca said, taking Grace's hand and fighting back tears. What happened? Mrs. Peterson said you were singing, and then you just fell down. I got really dizzy and my tummy hurt, Grace explained. And then everything went dark. Mrs. Peterson was really scared, but I told her you and Mr. William would come help me. A young doctor in scrubs entered the room, carrying a clipboard and wearing a reassuring smile. Mrs. Mitchell? I'm Dr. Rodriguez, the pediatric emergency physician. Grace is a very brave patient. What's wrong with her? Rebecca asked immediately. We're still running tests, but her initial blood work shows some concerning numbers. Her white blood cell count is elevated, and she has some other markers that suggest her body is fighting something significant. I want to admit her overnight for observation and run some additional tests in the morning. Rebecca felt the familiar panic of medical bills and insurance coverage creeping into her worry about Grace's health. But then she remembered that they had comprehensive health insurance now, and William had made sure it covered everything Grace might need. What kind of additional tests? Rebecca asked. Blood cultures to check for infection, an ultrasound to look at her internal organs, maybe a few others depending on what we find. I don't want to speculate until we have more information, but I want you to know that Grace is stable and we're going to figure out what's causing her symptoms. William arrived just as Dr. Rodriguez was finishing his explanation. He was slightly out of breath and looked more worried than Rebecca had ever seen him. How is she? He asked immediately, approaching Grace's bedside with the careful concern of someone who had clearly left an important meeting to rush to the hospital. Mr. William, Grace said, her voice stronger now that both her important adults were there. Did you know that ambulances have computers in them just like airplanes? The paramedic lady showed me how they talk to the hospital while they are driving. William smiled and smoothed Grace's hair back from her forehead. Leave it to you to learn something new even during a scary situation. How are you feeling now, sweetheart? Tired. And worried about missing the holiday concert tomorrow. I'm supposed to sing the solo in Silent Night. Don't worry about the concert, Rebecca said, though her voice was tight with concern. We need to focus on getting you feeling better. Dr. Rodriguez had been quietly observing the interaction between William and Grace, and Rebecca noticed his slight surprise at the obvious closeness between them. Are you Grace's father? The doctor asked William. William paused for just a moment before answering. I'm family, he said simply, and Grace nodded enthusiastically. Is our family, Grace confirmed. He takes care of me and Mama. As they settled in for what would clearly be a long night at the hospital, Rebecca found herself grateful beyond words for William's presence. He handled the insurance paperwork while she focused on keeping Grace comfortable. He coordinated with the office to cancel her meetings and arrange for coverage of urgent Grace's wings cases. Most importantly, he sat with them through the long hours of waiting, keeping Grace entertained with stories and helping Rebecca stay calm. Mrs. Mitchell. A new doctor appeared in the doorway around 10 o'clock that evening. I'm Dr. Sarah Williams, the pediatric hematologist. Dr. Rodriguez asked me to consult on Grace's case. Rebecca's stomach dropped. A hematologist meant blood disorders, which could mean cancer or other serious conditions. Grace's blood work shows some abnormalities that we want to investigate further, Dr. Williams continued. The good news is that she's responding well to 4 fluids, and her vital signs are stable. But we're going to need to do a bone marrow biopsy tomorrow to rule out some serious conditions. Serious conditions like what? William asked when Rebecca couldn't find her voice. Leukemia, lymphoma, or other blood cancers. I want to emphasize that there are many other possibilities, including treatable infections or autoimmune conditions. But we need to be thorough. Rebecca felt the room spinning around her. Just when their lives had finally reached a place of stability and happiness, the specter of serious illness was threatening to destroy everything they had built. Mama, why are you crying? Grace asked, noticing Rebecca's tears for the first time. I'm just worried about you, baby, Rebecca managed to say. But we don't need to be worried, Grace said matter-of-factly. Remember what you always tell the families we help through Grace's Wings? We tell them that they are not alone and that good people will help them figure everything out. Well, we have good people too. We have Dr. Williams and Dr. Rodriguez, and we have each other. William reached over and squeezed Rebecca's hand. Grace is right. Whatever this turns out to be, we'll face it together. And you have the best health insurance available, so cost won't be a factor in Grace's treatment. And, Grace added, if I have to stay in the hospital for a while, maybe we could start a program to help other kids who are scared in hospitals. Like Grace's Wings, but for medicine instead of airplanes. Even in the midst of her fear and exhaustion, Rebecca marveled at her daughter's ability to think about helping others when she was the one who needed help. That's a beautiful idea, sweetheart, Rebecca said. But right now, let's focus on getting you better. The bone marrow biopsy was scheduled for the next morning, and Rebecca spent the night in the uncomfortable hospital chair beside Grace's bed, watching her daughter sleep and listening to the monitors that assured her Grace's heart was still beating steadily. William had gone home around midnight to shower and change clothes, but he returned at 6 in the morning carrying coffee for Rebecca and a small stuffed airplane for Grace. I thought she might like a friend for the procedure, he explained, placing the toy next to Grace's pillow. As the medical team prepared Grace for the biopsy, Rebecca held her daughter's hand and tried to project calm confidence she didn't feel. Mama, Grace said as they wheeled her toward the procedure room, if I have something really serious, will you and Mr. Williams still help other families? Because they need you even if I get sick. Grace Elizabeth Mitchell, Rebecca said firmly, you are going to be fine, and we are all going to continue helping families together for many, many years. Do you understand me? I understand, Grace said with a small smile. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby. More than all the stars in the sky. As the medical team took Grace away for the biopsy, Rebecca collapsed into William's arms and finally allowed herself to cry for all the fear she had been holding inside. She's going to be okay, William said, holding her tightly. She's the strongest, bravest kid I've ever known, and she has the best medical team in the state taking care of her. I can't lose her, Rebecca whispered. She's everything good in my life. You're not going to lose her, William said with quiet conviction. And even if the news isn't what we want to hear, we'll figure it out together. Grace's Wings has taught us how to mobilize support for families in crisis. If we need to, we'll mobilize that same support for ourselves. As they waited for news from the biopsy, Rebecca realized that their greatest test wasn't going to be helping other families through their crises. It was going to be accepting help themselves when they needed it most. 3 days later, Dr. Williams walked into Grace's hospital room with a smile that immediately told Rebecca everything she needed to know. Grace was sitting up in bed, coloring in a book that one of the nurses had brought her, while William helped her organize the growing collection of get-well cards from Grace's Wings families around the world. I have good news, Dr. Williams announced. The bone marrow biopsy results came back clear. No signs of leukemia, lymphoma, or any other blood cancer. Rebecca felt her knees go weak with relief, and Williams had found hers automatically. Then what made her sick? Rebecca asked. A particularly aggressive viral infection that affected her bone marrow's ability to produce healthy blood cells temporarily. It's serious, but completely treatable and reversible. Grace's body is already starting to fight it off, and her blood counts are improving every day. Grace looked up from her coloring book with interest. So I'm not really sick? I just had strong germs. Very strong germs, Dr. Williams confirmed. But your body is winning the fight. We'll want to keep you here for a couple more days to make sure your blood counts continue to improve, and then you'll go home with some medicine to help your body finish getting better. Will I be better in time for Christmas? Grace asked. Because we're supposed to have a big party for all the Grace's Wings families, and I'm in charge of making the welcome signs. You should be feeling much better by Christmas, Dr. Williams said. But you'll need to take things easy for a few weeks. No running around or getting overtired. As Dr. Williams left to update Grace's charts, Rebecca finally allowed herself to breathe normally for the first time in 3 days. The relief was so overwhelming that she started crying again, but this time they were tears of gratitude instead of fear. Mama, why are you still crying if I'm getting better? Grace asked with concern. Because I'm so happy and relieved, Rebecca explained. Sometimes people cry when they are very happy. Like when Mr. William helped us move into our apartment. Exactly like that. William had been unusually quiet during the doctor's update, and Rebecca noticed him staring out the window with a thoughtful expression. William? Are you okay? I was just thinking, he said slowly. These past few days, watching you with Grace, seeing how you handled this crisis. Rebecca, you're an amazing mother. And Grace is the most resilient kid I've ever met. Thank you, Rebecca said, not sure where he was going with this observation. I was also thinking about something Grace said the first night we were here. She asked if we would still help other families even if she got seriously sick. Grace looked up from her coloring. I remember that. I was worried that you and Mama would be too sad to help people if something bad happened to me. What struck me, William continued, is that even when Grace was scared and facing the possibility of serious illness, her first concern was for other people. That kind of selflessness doesn't just happen by accident. It comes from being raised by someone who demonstrates compassion and putting others first every single day. Rebecca felt her cheeks warm under William's praise, but she also felt a familiar flutter in her stomach that had been happening more frequently when he looked at her with those serious, thoughtful eyes. I've also been thinking, William said, his voice becoming more hesitant, about how natural it felt to be here with you both. How right it felt to be part of the medical discussions and decision-making. How much I wanted to protect both of you from this scary situation. Grace had stopped coloring and was watching this conversation with the intense interest of a child who sensed something important happening. William. Rebecca started, not sure what she wanted to say. I know this might not be the right time or place, William said, but seeing Grace in that hospital bed made me realize that life is unpredictable and precious, and we shouldn't waste time pretending we don't feel things we actually do feel. Rebecca's heart started beating faster as she realized what William might be trying to say. I'm in love with you, Rebecca, William said quietly. I'm in love with your strength and your compassion and your determination to build a better life for Grace. I'm in love with the way you make ordinary moments feel special and the way you turn crises into opportunities to help other people. Grace clapped her hands together with delight. Mr. William loves us. I do love you both, William confirmed, smiling at Grace before turning back to Rebecca. More than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone. Rebecca felt tears starting again, but these were different from the relief tears or the fear tears. These were tears of recognition, of finally acknowledging something she had been feeling but hadn't allowed herself to fully accept. I love you too, she whispered. I think I've been falling in love with you since that first night in the airport, when you chose to help a stranger's child instead of just walking past. So are you going to get married? Grace asked with the blunt curiosity of a 7-year-old. William and Rebecca both laughed, and the tension in the room shifted to something warm and hopeful. "We haven't talked about that yet," William said. "What would you think if we did get married someday?" Grace considered this question with serious concentration. "Would that mean you would be my daddy?" "It would mean I would be your stepdad," William said carefully. "I could never replace your biological father, but I would love the chance to be a father figure in your life." "I don't remember my biological father," Grace said matter-of-factly. "He left when I was a baby. So really, you would just be my daddy." Rebecca felt her heart clench at Grace's casual acceptance of the father she had never known, but also at the hope in her voice when she talked about William filling that role. "And if you were my daddy," Grace continued, "then we would be a real family. And real families help other families, so Grace's wings would be even more special." "Grace's wings is already special because you inspired it," William said. "But you're right that it would mean something different if we were officially a family." A nurse appeared in the doorway to check Grace's vitals, interrupting the conversation, but giving Rebecca time to process everything that had just happened. In the space of an hour, she had learned that Grace was going to be fine and that William was in love with her. The emotional whiplash was overwhelming, but in the best possible way. "When can we go home?" Grace asked the nurse as she checked the fall line. "Probably day after tomorrow if your blood work continues to improve," the nurse said. "Are you excited to get back to your normal routine?" "Yes, but also we have to plan a wedding now," Grace announced cheerfully. The nurse looked between Rebecca and William with raised eyebrows and a knowing smile. "Congratulations. Hospital romances are my favorite kind." After the nurse left, Rebecca and William looked at each other and burst into laughter. "She's not wrong about the timing," Rebecca said. "This isn't exactly how I imagined my first love declaration happening." "Are you disappointed?" William asked with mock concern. "Are you kidding? Grace has been trying to matchmake us for months. She's probably thrilled that it finally worked." "I have been dropping hints," Grace admitted proudly. "Like when I made you both Christmas cards and signed them Love, Your Family. And when I told Mrs. Anderson that Mr. William was probably going to marry Mama because he already acts like a daddy." "You little schemer," Rebecca said, reaching over to tickle Grace gently. As the afternoon wore on and Grace napped between visits from doctors and nurses, Rebecca and William talked quietly about their feelings, their hopes for the future, and their commitment to Grace's wings. The program had become more than their work, it had become their mission, and they both agreed that getting married would only strengthen their ability to help other families. "I want to do this right," William said as they watched Grace sleep. "I want to propose properly, and I want Grace to be part of the whole process. She deserves to feel included in creating our family." "She would love that," Rebecca agreed. "But William, you need to know that Grace and I come as a package deal. If you marry me, you're also committing to being her father in every way that matters." "Rebecca," William said, taking her hand, "I'm not just marrying you. I'm joining your family. And I can't think of anything I want more than to spend the rest of my life loving you both and helping other families find the same kind of happiness we found together." That evening, Grace woke up from her nap feeling stronger and more energetic than she had in days. As Rebecca helped her eat dinner and William read to her from her favorite book about airplanes, it felt like their little family was exactly where it was supposed to be. "Tomorrow can we start planning the wedding?" Grace asked as Rebecca tucked her in for the night. "Tomorrow let's focus on getting you well enough to come home," Rebecca said. "And then we'll plan everything together." "Good," Grace said sleepily, "because I have lots of ideas about how to make it the most beautiful wedding ever. And we can invite all the Grace's Wings families so they can celebrate with us." As Grace drifted off to sleep, Rebecca and William sat holding hands in the quiet hospital room, watching over the little girl who had brought them together and changed both their lives in ways they never could have imagined. Christmas morning at Denver International Airport was unusually quiet, with only a few flights departing for last-minute holiday travel. Rebecca walked through the familiar terminals carrying a basket of homemade cookies for the airport staff who had to work on Christmas Day, while Grace skipped beside her wearing the red velvet dress she had specifically chosen for their Christmas surprise visit to work. "Why did Mr. William want to meet us here instead of opening presents at home?" Grace asked for the third time that morning. He said he had something special to show us at the airport, Rebecca replied, though she was just as curious as Grace about William's mysterious plan. Grace had been home from the hospital for 2 weeks and was almost completely recovered from her viral infection. Her energy had returned in full force, and she had thrown herself into planning their Grace's Wings Christmas party with the enthusiasm of a professional event coordinator. The party was scheduled for the following week, and families from around the country were planning to attend. "There he is," Grace said, pointing toward the gate area where William was standing next to a familiar airline employee. It was Tommy Chen, the security guard who had originally spotted Grace sleeping in the airport terminal all those months ago. "Tommy." Grace ran toward him with excitement. "What are you doing here on Christmas Day?" "I wanted to be part of Mr. Williams' surprise," Tommy said with a grin. "Plus, someone had to make sure the airport was safe for such an important event." Rebecca looked around the gate area and noticed that it had been decorated with white flowers and silver ribbons. Several airline employees were standing nearby with cameras, and she could see Lisa Chen from HR wearing a formal dress and holding what looked like an official document. "William, what is all this?" Rebecca asked. "Grace," William said, kneeling down to her level. "Do you remember when we first met, right here in this terminal?" "Of course I remember. I was sleeping in the chair over there, and you woke me up and took care of me and Mama." "That night changed my whole life," William said. "It brought me the most important people I've ever known, and it taught me what it means to be part of a real family." Grace nodded seriously, sensing that this was an important moment. "Rebecca," William continued, standing up and taking her hands, "that night I found a scared little girl sleeping alone in my airport. But I also found the woman I was meant to spend my life with, even though I didn't realize it at the time." Rebecca's heart started beating faster as she began to understand what was happening. "You taught me that the best way to build a life is to help other people build theirs. You showed me that kindness isn't just something you do occasionally, it's something you are, every single day, in every interaction with every person you meet." William reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, causing Grace to gasp with excitement. "Rebecca Mitchell, will you marry me? Will you let me be your husband and Grace's father, and a part of this amazing family you've created?" Before Rebecca could answer, William knelt down again to include Grace in the proposal. "Grace, will you help me ask your mama to marry me? Because I want to marry both of you. I want to be your family forever." Grace clapped her hands together and bounced on her toes. "Yes, yes, yes. Mama, say yes. We need Mr. William to be our family officially." Rebecca looked around at the airport terminal where their story had begun, at the employees who had become their extended family, at Grace's shining face, and at William's hopeful expression as he waited for her answer. "Yes," she said through happy tears. "Yes, we will marry you. Both of us." William slipped the ring onto Rebecca's finger, a beautiful solitaire diamond surrounded by smaller stones that sparkled in the airport lighting. Then he picked up Grace and spun her around while she giggled with delight. "We're getting married in an airport," Grace announced to everyone within hearing distance. Just like a fairy tale. The small crowd of airport employees burst into applause, and Tommy Chen started taking pictures with his phone to document the moment. Lisa Chen approached with the official document she had been carrying. "Since we're here," she said with a smile, "and since I happen to be a licensed wedding officiant, and since Grace has been planning your wedding since you got engaged in the hospital." She looked at William and Rebecca with raised eyebrows. "How would you feel about getting married right now?" Rebecca stared at her in shock. "Right now? Hey." "Grace planned the whole thing," William admitted. "She wanted the wedding to happen where we first met, and she wanted it to be small and simple, so we could focus on helping other families instead of spending money on a big party." "I picked out your dress," Grace said proudly, pointing to a garment bag that Tommy was holding. "Mrs. Chen helped me buy it, and Mr. William helped me plan everything else." Rebecca looked at the beautiful flowers, the small gathering of people who had become their chosen family, and the excited faces of William and Grace. "Are you sure this is what you want?" she asked Grace. "A simple airport wedding instead of a big ceremony?" "Mama, this is where our family started," Grace said with 7-year-old wisdom. "This is where Mr. William found us and decided to love us. Why would we want to get married anywhere else?" 20 minutes later, Rebecca stood in the airport bathroom changing into the most beautiful dress she had ever owned, a simple but elegant cream-colored dress that fit her perfectly. Grace had clearly inherited her mother's good taste or had excellent advisors. When she returned to the gate area, she found that word had spread through the airport and a small crowd of off-duty employees had gathered to witness the ceremony. Captain Rodriguez was there with her family, the cleaning crew that had worked the night shift when Grace was stranded, and even some of the families they had helped through Grace's wings who lived in the Denver area. "Are you ready?" William asked, offering her his arm as Lisa Chen took her position at the front of their makeshift altar. "I've been ready since that first night when you chose to help us instead of walking past," Rebecca said. Grace stood between them as they exchanged simple vows that focused on their commitment to each other and to continuing their mission of helping families in crisis. When Lisa Chen pronounced them husband and wife, the small crowd cheered, and Grace threw flower petals she had hidden in her pockets. "Now we're officially a family," Grace announced as William kissed Rebecca. "And Grace's Wings is officially a family business." As they walked through the airport as a newly married family, accepting congratulations from employees and travelers who had witnessed their impromptu ceremony, Rebecca marveled at how perfectly Grace had planned everything. The simplicity of the wedding reflected their values, the location honored their beginning, and the presence of their chosen family made it feel exactly right. "Mrs. Parker," William said, trying out Rebecca's new name as they posed for pictures in front of the window overlooking the runways. "I like the sound of that," Rebecca replied. "And I'm Grace Parker now too," Grace added, "which means I have the same name as the airplane program I inspired." That evening, they celebrated their wedding with takeout Chinese food in their apartment, surrounded by the wedding presents Grace had secretly wrapped for them, drawings she had made of their family, a photo album of all the Grace's Wings families they had helped, and a homemade certificate declaring them the best family in the world. "What should we do for our honeymoon?" William asked as they tucked Grace into bed. "Can we visit some of the Grace's Wings families?" Grace suggested, "Like Sophie in Denver and the family in Chicago and maybe the new family in Miami." Rebecca and William looked at each other and smiled. Of course their daughter would want to spend their honeymoon doing what their family did best, helping other families and spreading kindness wherever they went. "That sounds like the perfect honeymoon," Rebecca said. "And next year," Grace said sleepily, "we can help even more families because now we're married and official and everything." As Rebecca and William sat on their balcony later that night, wearing their wedding clothes and watching the city lights twinkle below, they talked about their hopes for the future of Grace's Wings and their excitement about being officially married. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Rebecca asked. "The quiet bachelor life with no responsibility for anyone but yourself." "Never," William said without hesitation. "My old life was just waiting for my real life to begin. And my real life started the night I found a 7-year-old sleeping in my airport and decided to help her." "I love you, Mr. Parker," Rebecca said. "I love you too, Mrs. Parker. And I love our daughter, and I love our mission, and I love our future." Inside their apartment, Grace was already dreaming about the next family they would help and the next adventure they would have together. And in airports around the country, there, Grace's Wings program continued to provide support and hope to families in crisis, proving every day that one act of kindness really can change everything. 1 year after their airport wedding, Rebecca Parker stood in the same gate area where her daughter had once slept alone and afraid, but this time she was there to celebrate the first annual Grace's Wings family reunion. The terminal was decorated with banners and balloons, and the gate area had been transformed into a reunion space where dozens of families they had helped over the past year could share their success stories. "Mama, Sophie's family is here," Grace called out, running across the terminal toward a familiar group near the information desk. Rebecca watched her 8-year-old daughter, now officially Grace Parker, embrace Sophie Dubois like the long-lost sister she had become. The two girls had maintained their friendship through video calls and letters, and Sophie's family had driven down from Denver specifically for this celebration. Rebecca. Marie Dubois approached with her arms outstretched for a hug. "Sophie has been talking about this reunion for weeks. She keeps saying it's like a birthday party for her new life in America." "How are things going with the family?" Rebecca asked. "Wonderful. I was promoted to assistant manager at the restaurant, and Sophie is bilingual now, helping other French families who visit Denver. We have been able to sponsor my sister's family to come from Paris next month. Rebecca felt the familiar warmth of satisfaction that came from seeing a family not just survive their crisis, but thrive beyond it. Marie's story had become typical of the Grace's Wings families. Initial crisis resolved, followed by gradual stability, then growth and the ability to help others. Mrs. Parker. A teenage boy approached with a woman who looked to be his mother. Rebecca recognized them immediately as the Peterson family from Seattle, the single mother and her 15-year-old son who had been stranded during a layover when their flight was canceled and they couldn't afford hotel rooms for their 3-day delay. "Marcus, look how tall you've gotten," Rebecca said, giving the teenager a hug. "How's school going?" "I made honor roll last semester," Marcus said proudly. "And Mom got promoted to supervisor at her job. We wanted to come thank you in person and to let you know that we started a program at our church to help other families who have travel emergencies." This was what made the Grace's Wings program truly special, not just the immediate crisis intervention, but the long-term ripple effects as families who had been helped became helpers themselves. William appeared at Rebecca's side, carrying a cup of coffee and grinning at the controlled chaos of dozens of children running around the terminal, while their parents caught up with each other and shared stories. "This is incredible," he said. "I count 43 families here, representing about 200 people whose lives were changed by Grace's Wings." "And Grace is in her element," Rebecca observed, watching their daughter move from group to group, introducing families to each other and making sure everyone felt included in the celebration. Tommy Chen, the security guard who had become something of a Grace's Wings legend, approached them with a clipboard and a concerned expression. "We might have a situation," he said quietly. "I just spotted a little girl, probably about 6 or 7, sleeping by herself near gate C15. No parents in sight, and she looks like she's been there for a while." Rebecca and William exchanged glances, and without needing to discuss it, they both started walking toward gate C15. Some instincts never fade, and the sight of a child alone in an airport would always trigger their immediate response. They found her curled up in a corner seat, wearing a purple dress that was wrinkled from sleeping and clutching a small backpack. She had light brown hair in 2 braids and was clearly exhausted. "Sweetheart," Rebecca said gently, approaching the child the same way William had approached Grace over a year ago. "Are you here by yourself?" The little girl's eyes opened slowly, and Rebecca could see the same combination of fear and hope that Grace had shown during their first meeting. "My name is Emma," the child said in a small voice. "I'm supposed to go to my grandpa in Phoenix, but they said my plane can't fly because of storms. The lady at the desk went home, and I don't know what to do." William was already pulling out his phone to check flight information, while Rebecca sat down beside Emma to learn more about her situation. "Where is your family, Emma?" Rebecca asked. "My mama is sick in the hospital in Boston. She said Grandpa would take care of me until she gets better, but I got confused about which plane to get on here." Rebecca felt the familiar combination of sympathy and determination that had driven every Grace's Wings intervention. Here was another child in crisis, another family that needed support and guidance. That sometimes the best thing you can give someone is just sitting next to them, so they don't feel alone. Rebecca squeezed William's hand and looked at their daughter skipping between them, chattering about the reunion and already planning next year's event. Grace had grown from a frightened child sleeping in an airport chair into a confident little girl who saw helping others as the most natural thing in the world. The program that had started with William's simple decision to help a sleeping child had become a movement that proved every day that kindness multiplies, that helping one person creates ripples that touch countless others, and that the most broken places in people's lives can become the foundation for healing others. As they climbed the stairs to their apartment, the same apartment where they had started their new life together, Rebecca reflected on how dramatically their story had changed. They had gone from desperate and alone to stable and surrounded by chosen family. From surviving day to day to building something that would last for generations. "I love our life," Grace announced as William unlocked their front door. "I love that we help people and that people help us, and that we all help each other." "I love our life too," Rebecca said, meaning it more than she had ever meant anything. That night, As they sat around their dining room table sharing takeout dinner and planning the next expansion of Grace's wings, Rebecca looked at her husband and daughter and felt the deep satisfaction of a life lived with purpose. They had proof that one small act of kindness really could change everything. They had families all over the country who were thriving because someone had been willing to help when help was needed. They had a daughter who understood that the best way to heal from your own pain is to prevent others from experiencing that same pain. And most importantly, they had each other, a family built not just on love, but on shared commitment to making the world a little bit kinder, one family at a time. Grace's wings would continue to grow, touching more lives and creating more ripples of kindness. But for tonight, it was enough to be together, planning their next adventure in helping others, secure in the knowledge that they had found their purpose and their family in the most unexpected of places. Sometimes the best stories start with the worst circumstances. Sometimes getting lost is the only way to find where you truly belong. And sometimes a 7-year-old sleeping in an airport chair is exactly where a love story begins.